Violent clashes between the Hindu community and the Sikh separatists were reported from Canada this week. Everybody saw on Twitter horrific visuals of the two communities clashing with each other outside a temple. A temple came under attack, following which the Hindus led a protest. There were lathis used, there was vandalism, cars were broken, and all this comes at a time when India Canada relationship is already under strain. So today we have with us journalist Harrison Faulkner, who was in fact on the ground on 4th of November when all of this happened. In fact, he was there when the temple came under attack on 4th, following which this entire protest, this entire demonstration by a Hindu group was led, traffic was stopped, and so much vandalism happened. So we will be talking to him about what really unfolded on 4th of November and after that. And then we'll be obviously talking to him about how did it reach this situation where this tension has spilled over to the streets in Canada, and what lies ahead for India-Canada relations. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Faulkner. If you could just tell us briefly about what really happened on 4th of November, since you were there on the ground witnessing it firsthand.
Right. So it begins on the Sunday. I believe that's the 4th or the 3rd. I'm not quite sure. And we saw visuals of a Khalistan protest outside of the Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton. And what exactly occurred before the clash started is not clear. We don't know what triggered a violent reaction from the Khalistanis to start attacking Hindus at this temple. But what we did see was a violent clash where punches were thrown, sticks and flags were used to beat worshipers at this Hindu temple. And it was a deeply embarrassing scene. Of course, it made international headlines and it dominated the news in your country, resulting in Indian Prime Minister Modi responding to what happened, as well as the Canadian Prime Minister. The following night, that's when I was there on the ground in Brampton, where the Hindu worshippers led a counter protest of sorts. They led a demonstration starting at that temple. And it started off as a totally peaceful event where there were flags waving and lots of chanting and even the national anthem of Canada being sung. But then what occurred was strange. All of a sudden, the protesters at this Hindu temple rushed out onto the street, blocked traffic on the road, and started shouting down the local police force, saying that the Peel police in Brampton were supporting Khalistanis, that there is two-tier policing against Hindus, and that they needed to be embarrassed and shamed for their policing the previous day. And it was really interesting because everybody in Canada thought that the protest itself on the Monday was about was targeting the Khalistanis. When I spoke to the protesters, the Hindu protesters, they told me that they were protesting the Peel police. They were protesting the police as well as the Khalistanis because they feel like they're together as one. And what occurred after that was unfortunate, deeply unfortunate scenes. Weapons were observed by the Peel police of this Hindu protest. The protesters, some of them, not all, but a minority of the protesters, were creating an unruly scene, vandalizing cars, and they made their way to a Sikh Gurdwara temple down the road, about a kilometer down the road. If it weren't for other Hindu protesters, the scene could have gotten totally out of hand. But to their credit, some of them, with the better judgment, blocked the protesters from blocked their own side from going to the temple. It was a really unfortunate scene. The argument that I've been making, and I've been trying to be as consistent as I can, I don't take a side on either side of this issue. I take the Canadian perspective. My argument is this. Over the past 3 or 4 years in Canada, we have welcomed in millions of new people. A lot of them, the majority of them, it appears, are from India. And so Indian issues are now becoming Canadian issues. We are having to deal with Indian issues in our streets, creating an unfortunate and dangerous situation for many in our communities. And I think that ultimately it's entirely preventable if we didn't have this climate in which foreign issues from India are spilling out into Canadian streets.
Right. I will, in fact, come to that issue, immigration, as well as the role of the police. But if I could ask you, Is this happening for the first time? You've been reporting in Canada for long now. Is this something new? Because I read, in fact, one of your tweets in which you said that there are armed groups of Sikh defense teams
Yes.
and mobile patrols to counter the Hindus that have come up on the ground. So situation really, I mean, appears to be tense, at least from a distance. I mean, if we see the visuals or read whatever is being reported from Canada. So what is the situation? Is it really tense? And is this happening for the first time? It has become this bad for the first time?
I would say it has become this bad for the first time. It's elevated. But, last year at around the Diwali time, last year in Canada, there were some scenes that were taking place in a parking lot where Khalistanis and Hindus got together, and there were some, I would call them skirmishes, far less violent than what we saw earlier in the week. But this has elevated now, and the reason it is elevated is because of the geopolitical situation, the sense that one community, the Sikh community, feels under attack by the Indian government, and the Indian and Hindus feel like they are under attack from Khalistanis, and now both sides are getting weapons and putting together religious defensive forces.
No, but there's also a distinction between the Sikhs and the Sikh separatists, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. There is a distinction, and there are Sikhs, in fact, that do support the Hindus in this situation. And I think there may be some crossover on the other side. It's certainly not, the Sikh population in Canada is very large. It's certainly not all Khalistani. I'm speaking in particular, and thank you for the correction, I'm speaking in particular about the Khalistani movement.
Right. So, but how deep is this Sikh separatist sentiment in Canada? We have been hearing of these episodes, but not, I mean, with this intensity is too much now. And plus this, you have in fact said in one of your interviews as well that this is embedded now in Canada's politics. Yes. And there have been several allegations made by different groups saying, and when you speak about the police or the politicians, that, they are turning a blind eye towards it. They are not addressing the issue. The Sikh separatists have, in fact, percolated in most of your institutions, whether it's politics or whether it's enforcement, even in the police. And we saw one of the instances where one police officer was also suspended. So how deep is this issue of Sikh separatism, and how deep is it rooted in Canadian system?
It's very deep. It's very embedded into our political system. As your viewers will know, the politician keeping the prime minister in power for the past 3 years is a Khalistani. He has supported Khalistan movements and spoken at Khalistan events. And each political party has figures that are high up, senior ranking officials in each political party that are part of, for example, the World Sikh Organization, and display Khalistani sympathies. So, I mean, I think that you're looking at a situation where, politically speaking, at a provincial level, that's our provinces, at the federal level, and even at a municipal level, there are politicians that are sympathetic to the Khalistan movement. You also have, as you pointed out, that one instance where a police officer of Peel Region was involved in that protest. I wouldn't be surprised if there are other police officers, naturally, that share those same sympathies. And it's become very normalized in our country for our political leaders, the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, to speak at events in which the Khalistan flag is flying, in which leaders that are venerated by Sikh separatists are displayed as shaheeds, as martyrs. It's a situation, frankly, I'll tell you, I never thought I would know so much about this issue. I never thought that it would become a Canadian issue, but it has dominated our politics. We have certain mayors, for example, across our country that display Khalistan sympathies. So it's deeply embedded. It has become Canadian politics. It's part of our politics now. And this is all part of the reason why we're seeing this.
So you're saying that it's just part of the politics and, of course, the vote bank, politics of appeasement of sorts, as to why this is happening.
Yes, that's I don't always agree. In fact, I tend not to agree with the Indian government. But when they point out that there are large voters involved in the Khalistani movement, they are correct in that sense. Like there are in other ethnic groups, I will say. For example, depending on which area you represent, you'll have to speak out against Israel if you want to get elected in our country in certain areas. Same thing goes here in our country when it comes to the Khalistan movement. You know, certain politicians will have to show their loyalty and talk down the Indian government to whip up support in their communities in order to get elected. They are right. This is what they would call vote bank politics. I call it ethnic politics, ethnic foreign politics, and I guess different names, but they all result in the same situation.
Right. So, going through your tweets and, of course, whatever you have reported, you're also very vocal about how borders must be watched. So, are you, and I mean, I don't know if I can say that, but are you anti-immigration, or do you think, or you an advocate of, say, a selective immigration process, if we put it like that? I mean, how big is the problem of illegal immigration in Canada, and how is it really affecting the people there?
Mm-hmm. So my position on immigration is that I am for limited immigration. I want the numbers to significantly decrease. And I think that actually having fewer people with the amount of space we have is one of Canada's underlying strengths. It's something we should actually preserve. We shouldn't try to reach a specific number. I want the best, most highest quality, smartest people. When it comes to illegal immigration is becoming a big problem in Canada. Significant problem, especially now. It used to never be an issue because we have geographic benefits that prevent illegal immigration. But now it's a big issue. We have people overstaying their visas. We have people coming here who just refuse to leave, and they use Canada as a way to get into the United States. And so illegal immigration is a big situation. There are up to potentially 500,000 illegal immigrants in Canada. I know in certain countries that number doesn't sound very large, but in our country, that's a significant number. So illegal immigration is a big deal. We also have open border immigration, where our situation is that many people aren't even coming here illegally, right? They're coming here on visas, student visas. They're coming here as temporary foreign workers. And the situation is such that we are out of homes for people. We are out of jobs for people. The rate in which newcomers have come to Canada has suppressed wages. So employers, for example, at entry-level jobs have no need to raise wages to stay competitive, resulting in a situation in which young Canadians can't find work because they need a living wage. But people who come to this country, whether it be from India, whether it be from other countries in South Asia, have a willingness to work for lower wages than Canadians do on average, resulting in a situation in which wages have been suppressed. Even the Prime Minister has now said that immigration is out of control. They needed to cut down significantly on the numbers. So it's a really big issue. And when even Justin Trudeau is saying that, the situation is out of control.
Is he saying that because elections are coming?
I think he's saying that because the public has soured on immigration to an extent that we've never seen before in our country. For the longest time, frankly, for well past my entire life, for almost Canada's entire history, we have been extremely welcoming to high levels of immigration, higher levels than basically the rest of the world.
Right.
But the public has soured so significantly and so quickly on immigration for a variety of reasons that it is so unpopular for even a leftist government to support immigration. They have to change. And I do believe an election is coming. It has to come by, I believe, October 2025. It may come earlier.
Oh, okay. So are you also voicing the concern of a local Canadian, a Canadian national who also has similar concerns, whatever you just told me?
Yes. The majority of Canadians, it's over 60% actually, across several different polls, are now saying that immigration must be lowered. And if the local Canadian, if the mainstream Canadian pollsters are getting those figures, the numbers are way higher than what they're reporting. The numbers are likely in the 75+% range of Canadians thinking that this is out of control. And one of the reasons, one of the factors of this is, like I said before, which is ethnic foreign politics, diaspora politics are becoming Canadian issues. The Canadian people do not care about this. They are busy trying to make ends meet. Our GDP per capita is decreasing. Canadians are getting poorer. Times are very tough for us in this country. So people are too busy to worry about picking a side between the Khalistanis or the Hindus or the Israelis or the Palestinians. They're just trying to get by. But because of our system now, these issues are dominating our news cycle, and they're taking the focus of our politicians away from the issues that really matter.
I mean, we have written and of course, read a lot of reports saying that how things were much better under Stephen Harper, and this has all come back after Trudeau. So going ahead, when you talk about India-Canada relationship, what do you think? Where are we headed? Because right now, if we see things are quite tense, there have been expulsions of diplomats from both countries. The High Commissioner has been recalled. Then the Canadian government has also accused our Home Minister, Mr. Amit Shah, of certain things. So where do you see this going? And in fact, how and what can be done to repair this? Because you must be in touch with people from the Canadian authorities as well. What is the sense that you're getting?
My sense is that, from what I've read from the Department of Justice in the United States, their indictment regarding the Gurpatwant Singh Panoon attempted murder, as well as what the RCMP have said in Canada regarding the Nijar assassination, that there are significant issues that the Indian government should be working with the Canadian government on to address. Also, I think if the Canadian government can restrict the number of people we take in from India, for example, to say, look, we have an issue right now with diaspora politics regarding India. Maybe for now, we're not going to be welcoming in more people from India so that we can have a time for the newcomers in this country from India to assimilate into Canadian culture. Because we never used to have this issue. We've always had lots of Indian immigrants who have assimilated into Canada perfectly fine. But the rate has changed. The speed at which people are coming in is resulting in a situation in which you can't even expect people to assimilate quickly because of how many people are coming in. I think we need to slow down immigration from India to allow our newcomers to come to terms with our system, with our way of life, which is built on religious tolerance, which is built on freedom, which is built on respect. So we have a situation now in which the Khalistan movement and the Hindus are clashing. That is resulting in the India-Canada relationship breaking down, and it's resulting in India believing they can police their diaspora. Two things have to happen, I think. I think India needs to say and recognize, for example, that the diaspora cannot be policed outside of Indian borders, right? You can control your borders, absolutely fine. That's your business. But you can't control your diaspora in Canada. The Chinese government does this. The Iranian government does this. I don't believe India should do it. Also, the Canadian government needs to get a grip on this Khalistan movement, and they need to get a grip on this ethnic fighting and say, look, when you come to Canada, park your issues at the door. Come to Canada and become Canadian, respect our values, respect our system, and I think things will eventually come down. I think India and Canada want to work together. I think there is a want to work together, but both sides need to address the issues that are blocking that at the moment.
There also have been concerns about how Canadian authorities are basically not, when countries work together towards, say, investigating a particular crime. So that also there is no cooperation from the Canadian authorities. That is one thing that we keep hearing from law enforcement here, because of course, when you say are investigating crimes that transcends any national boundary, like if there are cyber crimes or say terrorism related crimes, or when we talk about the red notices that Interpol issues, like for example, I'll just give you one example of Goldie Brar, this designated terrorist who's supposed to be in Canada. We were in touch with RCMP, but there's nothing that's coming from Canadian authorities on where he is, because he's a wanted gangster, he's a wanted terrorist. So Indian authorities keep saying that there's lack of cooperation from Canadian authorities as far as investigations are concerned, and that's not how countries operate. I mean, they have to basically cooperate with each other in investigations for basically reaching somewhere in any investigation. So what are your views on that?
Well, I think it's interesting because you hear the same argument from Canada's High Commissioner to India, who said that the Indians weren't cooperating when Canada was trying to give them evidence. So it's interesting. You got one side saying one thing and the other side saying the exact opposite.
I think
I'm
that is
not.
what needs to improve.
Yes, I think so. And I think, again, right, both sides are trying to accomplish different goals here. But when you say that the Canadian government isn't cooperating with the Indian government and the Canadian government says the same thing to the Indians,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're in a position where, frankly, we're not going to know what's going on, right? We just have to, I guess, take the word of our respective sides and see what happens. But, you know, I think at the same time, the DOJ indictment is pretty significant, and you read through what they've written regarding the Panoon attempted assassination. I think Justin Trudeau's what he said in the House of Commons, linking the Indian government to the Nijar assassination, is such a significant thing to say. It's such a major statement that I don't believe, and I'm no fan of Justin Trudeau. But I don't believe Justin Trudeau would make such a statement without being briefed, for example, by the United States on their intelligence, on what they have, because the United States had a DOJ mole inside of the operation regarding the attempted assassination on that Sikh separatist leader Panoon. So, I think that when it comes to nations behaving and operating the way they should, there is blame to go around here. But if the DOJ indictment is true, the Indian government needs to behave the way they claim to behave and not try to go after their issue, not try to police their diaspora. It's very important that countries that want to have a relationship with the United States and Canada understand that those issues, that it cannot be handled that way going forward. We know there are issues, but there are ways to approach those issues and there are ways not to approach those issues.
Right. Thank you so much. Just last question, and then I let you go. I just wanted to understand now, since you're on the ground, what is the situation like? What do you see happening in the next few days? Is it any better or is it getting worse? And secondly, there are allegations, like we spoke about in the beginning of this interaction, that there are allegations against policemen for turning a blind eye, not really acting. So what is happening on that front? Because there were some arrests made, but then again, the allegation is that only the Hindus were arrested and the Sikh separatists were not touched, and there's a bias there.
Right. So, I mean, I think that the officer being suspended for participating in the Khalistan protest on the Sunday signals an intention by the Peel Police to try to crack down on this issue. I'm certain that he is not the only Peel Police officer in Brampton that has these sympathies, but it would indicate to me that the Peel Police are not in the pocket of the Khalistanis if they're willing to punish officers for being involved in a protest. And it's interesting, we don't exactly know what this officer was doing, whether this officer was involved in the violence or whether or not he was there with his wife and children and on the sidelines and doing what he's allowed to do as a Canadian citizen. We're not exactly sure. In regards to what goes on afterwards, this is not over in Brampton. The Sikhs for Justice is planning a protest of their own now in Brampton. They are planning a counter protest, if you will, to basically just continue this process. And I think that the Canadian people are sick of this. I think they are tired of this. Like I said at the beginning, most Canadians who are not connected to politics back home in India, who have no connection to India whatsoever, have no side of this. And so, yeah, this is not over. There will be a demonstration organized by Sikhs for Justice. And I think there will be more news regarding what the Peel Police do with this officer that they have suspended. More evidence to come out about what this officer was involved in. And lastly, to answer your last part of that question, what the Peel Police are, the behavior of the Peel Police in policing one side or the other, I'm not exactly sure. I will tell you, though, that on the Hindu protest, they observed weapons, but I'm not exactly sure if anyone was actually arrested. And there was not a very significant police presence at that Hindu counter protest the following day, which would indicate to me that they're trying to display a non-biased position on this issue. So that would be my perspective. I generally don't believe that the Peel Police or any police department in Canada is taking one side or the other. but tensions are very high.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Faulkner, for joining us and telling our viewers what you saw from the ground and where this probably would go. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.